Before we dig in, a quick thank you to the sponsors ready to grow with the Soil Sisters. Tejas Tonic is the official beverage of the Texas Soil Sisters. We especially love that the hemp for Tejas Tonic is organically farmed in the Texas Hill Country, with farms in both Dripping Springs and Lukenbach, Texas. The Soil Sisters podcast is powered by B&P Electric. Whether you're building, remodeling, installing low-voltage landscape lighting, or in need of an inspection, B&P is your Central Texas electrical contractor. Find links to our sponsors in the podcast show notes or head over to txsoilsisters.co. You're listening to the Soil Sisters podcast, where we dig in on family farming and ranching, regenerative agriculture, healthy living, and planting seeds in our community. We invite you to listen, subscribe, and grow with the Soil Sisters. Hi, y'all. I'm Joanna Newting, joined by my blood, soul, and soil sister, Crystal, and our friend and special guest, Tara Dukart from Seek First Ranch. Everyone, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Tara. We're so happy to have you.
I am very excited to be here.
Joshua and Tara Dukart of Seek First Ranch have been practicing regenerative and holistic management since 2008. Their Western North Dakota triple generation operation is called Seek First Ranch, where they are full-time raisin and grazing grass-fed beef and hair sheep, direct marketing premium meats, and homeschooling their 3 children, right next door to Joshua's parents. Tara has spent the first half of her career teaching middle schoolers. Bless you, Tara.
Thank you so much.
She is also a certified whole farm and ranch trainer through Holistic Management International and a certified speaker and coach with Maxwell Leadership. With a knack for turning chaos into clarity, Josh and Tara have already helped hundreds of families and teams from around the world level up their land, relationships, and wealth through their signature Regenerate school and retreats. And we were fortunate enough to meet Tara and Josh when we attended Regen Ag School through HMI. And I'm telling you, you are just full on sunshine and a breath of fresh air. And we are just so grateful to have you in our little holistic management family.
Yes, thank you. It was so fun meeting both of you down in Texas. And I appreciate you reading that introduction, because if I were to have introduced myself, I would have said something like, Tara spends an exorbitant amount of time explaining to people that not all sheep grow wool, even though they don't even ask. So we have on our ranch here, we have cattle and we have hair sheep, and they often get mistaken for goats. So it's a lot of me lovingly correcting people that they are hair sheep and hair sheep exist.
I love that.
Since you are raising the sheep for meat, for protein, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so tell people the difference between the meat from a hair sheep and a wool sheep.
Absolutely. So I will say nothing against wool sheep. People who have wool sheep love their wool sheep, and it's a great fit for them. Obviously, wool sheep produce wool, and so that fiber can be used for whatever people want to use wool for. But hair sheep grow thicker coats of hair during the winter, just like goats do, and then they shed it off in the summertime. So because hair sheep do not produce lanolin like wool sheep do, hair sheep do not have that telltale mutton flavor of meat in the same way that wool sheep do. So it's my understanding that mutton flavor on sheep that are 12 months on up, like those older sheep that typically put that off-putting mutton flavor, is attributed to the lanolin. So for our hair sheep, the main reason we got them here at Seek First Ranch was so that they could eat weeds. And the second reason is because the meat is delicious. So it's a really tender, mild flavor meat. In fact, we just had some this morning for breakfast, just ground lamb, make it with eggs, add some salt and pepper. It makes for a delicious breakfast.
Nice. I love it. And I really enjoy eating lamb myself. people will just kind of put it in that same gamey category that they do other things. But people eat both, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, wool
Okay.
sheep and hair
Mhm.
sheep. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's just personal preference, and it's also what you get
Yeah.
used to. But I love protein like you girls do. And so we love different sources of protein, and we absolutely love that we have the ability to raise and graze our animals and eat ranch raised beef and lamb that was raised right here on our place. So we are well fed and we appreciate it.
We love that. You know, there are a lot of things that we want to talk to you about, and I'm not sure exactly where we should jump in because, it's kind of like one of those circles where it's all eventually going to come back to the same place anyway. So, we met you at Regen Ag School, and you were really great at being the person who kind of kept everything in order. You made sure we registered aha moments for the day that we could come and talk about later, and the share circles and things like that. And one of the things that you said that has really stuck out for me is that you can't be the player and the referee, you can't be the coach and the referee. We need people to play separate roles to really make things work. And there's just so many people that are like our family who are in a transition or are planning for a transition in their own family with their own family's operation. And, you went through that yourself. And now you and Josh do an excellent job of coaching folks through that experience. So, based on everything I just kind of rambled off, jump in wherever you think is a good place to start off this conversation.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for saying that. I always want to bring value into the conversations, and what people are needing is definitely different given their context, given their family situation. But I do want to say, when Joshua and I decided to move back to the family ranch, which a big part of our story is we said we would never, ever, ever move back here. Joshua didn't think that it was going to be profitable. I didn't think that I was going to like the lifestyle. I participated that it would feel very, very isolating physically and mentally. We live in rural North Dakota. We have long, harsh, cold winters, and I did not grow up on a farm or a ranch. So I just perceived living in the country with this kind of setting, it would feel very, very isolating. And what our reality has been is actually the opposite. So it's taken a lot of intentionality and effort, but we are a triple generation operation. We live next door to my in-laws, which is not for everybody, but I absolutely love it. And we've been very blessed by the multi-generational experience. We have 3 kids and we homeschool. So we essentially do life with them. So they are a part of our everyday lives. They watch us through our wins and they watch us through our, well, I will say losses, but a better way that I like to put it, and this is from my mentor, John Maxwell, sometimes we win and sometimes we learn. And so sometimes those perceived losses or failures are really, really good learning opportunities and can be takeaways for us if we're willing to see it from that perspective. Not that we always can in the moment, but that is something that helps. So back to when we got to meet you, yes, Joshua and I have been able to be a part of the Holistic Management International's Regen Ag School. We've done that twice now, and they do it pretty much on an annual basis. So if you ever want to look into that, listeners, you can always check out the Holistic Management International website. But through that, what I love is how we start those schools, which is the same way that Joshua and I start the schools and retreats that he and I facilitate together. We call that our Regenerate schools or Regenerate retreats, just depending on whether or not lodging and meals are included. So we like to start with an opening circle. And in that opening circle, what people share in those first few minutes really sets the stage and sets the tone for the rest of the event. And so we come in there being very intentional about wanting to be transparent. We do not have all the answers. One of the reasons why we named Seek First Ranch, which is the name of our business, the name of our ranch, the reason we named it Seek First Ranch was because we believe in the power of asking really great questions. And there's also a faith component for us that speaks to us. But yes, when we ask questions, which we do in the opening circle, it allows for people to open up and tell us who they are and what's most important to them in a very short but meaningful time.
I really thought those were beautiful exchanges that we were all having, and everybody just being seen and heard.
I agree. And they're so genuine. People are so genuine in that space.
And this is what I found through the whole class was we started sharing, and I literally just got tears in my eyes you talking about that, because it was that sweet and that genuine and open and just communicative, and like, this is what I'm struggling with, and this is my situation, and this is where I'm going, and this is what I want. This is what I want to get from this place. And I don't know how to do that, and we were just all together, and it really was such a beautiful experience. So yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I agree. It was for me too. It always is. And it will never be lost on Joshua or me that people are willing to tell us what they really think and tell us what they're really feeling and tell us about the things that they're maybe struggling with or that they just simply have questions about. I think we all have questions. We're all wrestling with what are our options? What could that look like? What could I consider? So again, that part of that feeling safe in the space of asking questions, especially ones that challenge our paradigm, is such a gift. And so the fact that people are willing to be open with us is, like I said, it's never lost on us. It's such an honor to be a part of that with people.
And I also want to say real quickly, I have been asking questions for a long time about a lot of things. And I feel like when we got there to that space and with those people, I finally felt like, oh, these are the people I should be asking these questions. Like I've been asking other people who had other ideas. So the thing that I wanted to know, they weren't able to tell me because they were talking from a whole different paradigm. And this was like, these are my people. This is the place. This is the approach that I'm looking to take in my life and through my work.
Yes, Crystal, I think you just unlocked what has been a mystery to me, because it's hard to articulate or to define why it is so powerful. But I think that's it. It's like giving people permission to open up and say what they need to say. And we realize how alike so many of us are, even though we've lived such different lives and we come from different backgrounds. That can all be celebrated when we can figure out how we can use those experiences to help somebody else along on their journey, wherever they are.
Well, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking about our own families and how when it's time to start having these conversations with our family, how scared oftentimes people are to open up, to be transparent, to say the thing that's on their heart that they haven't felt safe to say before. And so what we were doing together as a group, we each had our own challenges, whether or not that was with succession planning or someone newly being in charge of something and trying to transition out of conventional agriculture into a regenerative and holistic mindset. But we all struggled with how do we do what we've just done together now with our own families.
Yes, that is such a good point that she brought up. And I think I don't want anyone to miss that, because I think that is just such an insightful comment. And Joshua and I were just talking about this earlier today on that very topic. We invite people to have these kinds of conversations before the funeral, and before people's backs are against the wall. So I know that many of you, and I would imagine some of you listeners, you've already been in a place where there has been a funeral, and that has driven some of the decisions that you had to make, and you had to make quickly. Sometimes you have felt like your back is against the wall. And we know that mentally, we're just not in the same space. We can't think creatively with all of the same options when we are grieving either a death or a loss, or grieving what we thought could have been or should have been. I mean, those are so hard. That's so hard for people to deal with. So Joshua and I really encourage people to be proactive with these kinds of conversations. So be proactive rather than reactive. Do it before your back's against the wall. Do it before, like I said, there's a funeral. And so, yes, I'm a former middle school writing and language arts teacher. And not that this defines, but I love alliteration so much. And so whenever I can get words like soil sisters, hello, I think this was meant to be girls, soil sisters. Okay, for listeners, this is your PSA. If you do not know what an alliteration is, let me take you back to 8th grade English, where an alliteration is when phrases start with the same letter. Like soil sisters, like regenerate, retreat. We started something new that provides accountability for people called Wind Warriors, which we can talk about more a little bit later in this podcast. But we also talk about, Joshua and I talk about being legacy leaders. Another alliteration, my friends.
Yes.
This is free of charge for you. So with legacy leaders, if we think about ourselves in terms of legacy leaders, we all want to leave a legacy. And that can involve an actual succession planning or a succession plan. But it also can simply just mean, how do we start the conversation? How do we lead the conversation of what do I want? What do we as a family want? What do we want people to say about us for future generations? What mark do we want to leave on the world? How do we want our soils to be functioning? We can leave a legacy with our soils, with anything that's within our care or things that we're stewarding. What legacy do we want to have for our animals or for our family or for our relationships? So when we think about, again, that phrase, how can we be a legacy leader? Starting with that phrase and being proactive with it can really help set the stage for these kinds of conversations.
Nowadays, finding time for in real life connection is a challenge in and of itself. So, I talked to Crystal about a modern spin on the classic farmers co op, and we'd be delighted if you join us. The concept is pretty simple: give $5, receive support. You donate $5 or more per month and gain access to the Texas Soil Sisters Co op monthly online meetup. This is a private but open dialogue where you can bring questions and receive support from our growing community. Maybe it's questions about industrial hemp production, or you're looking for land, or maybe a land steward, or connecting with alternative land use opportunities. Maybe you're in the beginning stage of off ramping from conventional ag like we are. We love passing along the powerful education we're receiving and helping other soil sisters and misters like you find solutions. So, if you're a gardener, land steward, farmer, rancher, or limited resource landowner, you're invited to join us on our monthly co op call with your donation. Sign up at txsoilsisters.co/grow. These monthly meetings are not recorded. They take place on the third Monday of every month at 6 p.m. Central Time. Sign up at txsoilsisters.co/grow. So, quick question. If we wanted to do this, say someone wants to poll their whole family. I mean, I'm a nerd that would come up with a little Google form and have you answer a bunch of questions, and then I have everybody's answer, because I feel like when you try to do this in a setting where you're sitting there together, there's some naturally like either polarizing figures around the table, or maybe some that are the leaders of the table. And so people feel obligated to go along with what this person said, or I'm going to say exactly the opposite of what that person said, or, so I just feel like doing it in privacy and then having somebody see it and read it and not necessarily say who is attached to whatever this hope or dream or goal is. That to me would be the way to do it. I can't ever get anybody to fill out a form. So What are some ways that you help families
Yes.
figure that
So
out?
I will say one of the most effective ways, because I absolutely hear you, people don't always want to, or they're not really motivated to just run out and fill a form. I totally get that. Although I will say we do have some free resources on our website. So what I'm going to do right now before I forget, I'm going to give you our website, and then I will provide for you, so you ladies can put this in the show notes, but I will give you the password and the direct link to get to some of our free reproducibles. So seekfirstranch.com. Again, it's seekfirstranch.com. And when you go there, you'll see multiple ways will pop up with how Joshua and I intend to serve people. And one of those ways is through purchasing of meat, but that is only for local folks only. So when we say local, we mean local, but the rest of the items are available to anybody all over the world. So you'll see that we offer Regenerate retreats. You can book us to facilitate or keynote or speak at an event or a workshop that you are hosting, or if you are on a board, or if you have recommendation power, we are available to do those topic specific things. And then we also offer a Win Warriors, which is an accountability group, because once people actually get to a place where they've made progress, we want to see them through in following up with that. So let me reel that back again. So what we find is the most beneficial, because Joshua and I, like most people, we have very full lives. So in our context, we are running a regeneratively managed ranch full-time. We are parenting full-time, homeschooling full-time, and then we also speak, teach, do this other stuff on the side. So to best leverage our time, we want to bring as much value to people in the shortest little bits as possible, because we also know other people have busy lives. So we invite people to what we call Regenerate schools or retreats, and it is a 3-day event. And what we have really loved about this, when we started, maybe one person from the operation would attend. And a long time ago, when I first started going to workshops with Joshua, I'll just say this, the demographics was primarily male. And so just usually the head of the ranch, so to speak, would be there. And then I found that over, the last, a couple of decades, women have talked about this too, more women have shown up. So women, men, couples. But over the last, I would say 10 years, I've really seen this increase in families showing up. And as you both know, oftentimes agricultural producers is made up of families. So we have all of these different people of different ages, different stages, working and living in agriculture. And then some of these people also have off-farm or off-ranch jobs. Everybody's context, again, looks different. But what a blessing to be able to bring youth into the conversations. So into these workshops, into these events. Why not get exposed to brilliant questions, which, by the way, I actually think kids ask the most brilliant questions. We call our kids very inquisitive, proficient, because kids are full of questions and they want to know why, and they're figuring out how the world works and why would you do that? So kids ask great questions. And so when you have on one end of the spectrum, young kids asking really, really good, powerful questions, and you have, we'll say that the oldest generation, whatever age that is, when they have the wisdom and the life experience that they bring to the table, and then you have all those ages and stages in the middle, it is very, very rich, deep, meaningful conversation when all those people get to be together. So specifically in our Regenerate schools and retreats, we limit them to 25 people because we want people to feel safe. And we want to be able to get around the circle and hear from everybody. But what we're finding is the more that Joshua and I do these things together, and the more that we've brought our own kids into it to help observe and facilitate and set up and just be a part of the process, the more people have brought their own youth to participate. And some of my favorite schools that we have done have been because it's included kids 8 years old on up that were fully engaged, fully participatory, taking notes. We had one family in our last retreat. They brought their family of 6, so 4 kids, And their oldest two fully participated, a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. And their mom said to me during the middle of it, she said, my son does not take notes at school. He just has one of those, like he can just remember things. Like he doesn't need to take notes, but he has already taken 2.5 pages of notes. And I think we were just like a half day in so far. She asked him about it because she knows that's unusual, atypical behavior for him. And he said, Mom, I wrote all of this down because I need to know what questions we need to be asking ourselves in case we decide that bringing cattle onto this operation would be a good fit for us and for our family. And he's 13. And I just thought
and he understands his legacy.
Yes.
He understands that he needs to understand this stuff.
Yes. And so, what a gift for him, but not just for him, but for everybody else in the room. And then the other really beautiful thing that happens during these events is because, as I'm sure both of you have experienced, sometimes we cannot hear things from a family member, right? We just can't receive the information, even though we love these people dearly, even if there might be conflict, let's be honest. But even if there's not conflict, we can't always hear things from our spouse or from a sibling or from the next generation or from our child, but we can hear it from somebody else. So what Joshua and I are really intentional about doing when we facilitate these events is we open up the doors for conversation, which allows one family who needs to hear something, but to hear it from a different family. And they can hear it, and they can receive it, and they can process it, and then they can own the idea. And we all need to own our own ideas, right? We typically don't do something because somebody else told us to, or again, because we feel backed into a corner. We typically adopt ideas and make positive change when we've adopted the idea and it becomes our own. And so when people can show up to these events, ask some questions, hear testimonials from other people outside of their family and operation, and they have a chance to resonate on that and think about it and process it, then they can come back to their family and present it as their idea. And then behind the scenes, never mind, in this case, I'm just going to use a wife example. The wife maybe was like, I've been trying to tell you that for years, right? But just in this context that we'll just say this is the husband receiving new information, right? Like he needed to hear it from someone else and he needed to own it.
Yes. I also feel like in everything that you're saying, Joanna, for us, I feel like there needs to be a lot more conversation, a lot more people involved besides just me and you. Like it can't be us and them. It needs to be everyone so that we're not the only ones that are presenting or sharing this information as something that we want to do. Like to have the buy-in from the other people in the family that already are bought in.
Right. Well, and that was why I asked the question, which you still haven't answered yet. So we're going to get you to answer that because I put together an idea and I sent an email to all of the stakeholders, and getting everyone involved in the conversation is the first battle that you fight. So before I can get them to a retreat with you and Josh, we have to recognize and get on the same page that yes, you might already have a plan, but there are reasons to revisit plans, and letting the stakeholders who are coming up understand what's going on. If there's those big things that happen like birth or death or the sale of a lot of land, these different things that force us into revisiting a plan. How do we get there?
Yes, that's a really good question. I will do my best to answer it, but then you can absolutely call me out if it's still not the answer, if it's not completely answering your question, because it's multifaceted and it's multi-layered. And if it were easy and if there were one simple answer, then everybody would be doing it already, right? Mm-hmm. So here's a couple of ideas and a couple of strategy things. You can let me know if you find these beneficial or not. So first of all, to get to a retreat like this, so like if you were to invite, the nice thing about that is that you don't have to, if you're trying to lead the meeting, back to your, what you mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast, it's difficult to be a player in the game, but also a coach in the game. It's difficult to facilitate a meeting that you also have skin in the game. So we highly recommend, even when there is not conflict, but especially when there is, hiring an outside facilitator. And if you have somebody in the group that is very, very resistant, let them be the one to research out facilitation options. So once you get an outside facilitator, they are the one asking the questions and making sure that everybody has an opportunity to respond. But what's really important too is then just making sure that everybody who needs to be at the table is at the table for that conversation. So I have a couple of ideas for how we invite, and this has been beneficial in my own family situation, because I'm going to be frank and honest that there have been some conversations that I didn't think that I needed to be a part of, and I very much did. And even though sometimes people are like, well, what does this have to do with me? This doesn't really involve me, or I don't want to be a part of this succession plan, just for example. The fact that people are given an opportunity to show up and say for themselves, I don't want to continue, I am choosing not to participate, that is still their decision that they get to voice. And then that's beneficial for the whole team, because then it's to avoid, years, weeks, months down the road of somebody saying, well, you never asked, I never said. So one of the worst things we can do is make assumptions on other people's behalf. And so here's a strategy that we promote and we invite others to consider. So if you are now we all make assumptions, right? And it's our brain loves shortcuts. And so the more we can assume, the more we just, carry on with our lives. So sometimes we just assume that somebody won't participate, or we assume that someone won't cooperate, or that somebody's not interested. So if you're inviting to an event, here's how I would word it. So let's say that you're inviting somebody, we'll say to an educational event where they might learn something and it might help get the conversation flowing. I might say something like, if I'm inviting Crystal, there is this event. Here's the date. Here's the time. Here's the location. If I can be honest, I don't know that you are interested or that you would like to attend, but I realized that if I don't invite you, then I'm taking your choice away. And that's not fair for me to do. So the choice, I think, should be yours. Here's the information. You decide whether or not you would like to attend. And if you're there, I'll see you there. But you let them know that it's okay either way. If you'd like to invite them to the table to be a part of a facilitated conversation, so maybe these are your other stakeholders, you could say something like, hey, I've hired a facilitator. Here are the time options and the location options. I would appreciate your feedback, and I would love for you to have the opportunity to participate, because I don't want to make any assumptions on your behalf. The facilitator is going to be asking these different questions. Everyone gets to voice their opinion, and it's really not fair for me to speak for you. So would you be willing to come? You could fill in the blanks. You know the person, you kind of know probably what motivates them. But essentially, you want to make sure that they understand that you don't want to be in a position where you are going to make assumptions on their behalf or speak for them. And most people find that, it reduces defensiveness. They actually realize psychologically that their opinions are valued and their words matter. And it's not fair for somebody to speak for them. Now ask me your next question, because if that still wasn't it.
That's good. I like this a lot. And also because it forces someone to accept responsibility for either showing up or not showing up.
Yes. Now, I will tell you a story that I believe I told you both in Texas. And I hope this resonates with the listeners, because it does resonate with most people. And it is really calling my own self out. So before Joshua and I this is the part in our lives where we still were absolutely never, ever, ever going to move back to the family ranch. We had agreed to it, both of us. And so we were firm on that. Like it was black and white for me. But Joshua, who is very, very, very intentional about legacy planning, he knew that his parents were third generation on this ranch. And they both, in this context, had off-farm jobs. They were both getting close to retirement, and decisions needed to be made about what was the future of this specific ranch, what was going to happen if Joshua and I were not going to come back. And again, in this context, Joshua has one sibling, his sister. So Joshua hired a certified educator through Holistic Management International, although I'm not saying you need to. There are other facilitators out there that are wonderful. So he hired someone, and he set the date and the time and the location. And this was to have the conversation. So his parents were invited, his sister was invited, and then Joshua and I were, I think, married for about a year at the time. And so I was invited, but I was extremely resistant to attending for two reasons. Number one, I didn't think that it had anything to do with me. I wasn't going to move back there. Joshua could represent the both of us. It didn't really matter. The second reason is very selfish. It was St. Patrick's Day, and I had plans with my coworkers to go celebrate. So I was dressed head to toe in like green and green glitter and green feather boa. I was out with my coworkers, and Joshua picked me up and brought me there, and I looked ridiculous. So we come to the table, and I know my body language says so much, right? I mean, my arms were crossed, and I was like, I'm only here because I need to be, and I didn't think I needed to be a part of the conversation. But it was such a blessing because the facilitator was very intentional about hearing from everybody. And it's an honor, but also a little bit intimidating to kind of be put on the spot and say, okay, like it's hard to answer the question, what do you really want in the future? What is this really going to look like? And side note, it was wonderful that Joshua's sister was able to be there because she was able to speak for herself and nobody made any kind of assumptions on her behalf. She got to say that I don't intend to, ever take over the farm. That was her choice. But in this case, the facilitator asked Joshua's parents one at a time, what does retirement look like for you? And so he asked that question to my father-in-law first, who is not quick to give his opinion at all. It was a long pause. And wait, no, I'm telling the story wrong. Let me go back a step. I don't know that he necessarily specified. It was whoever wanted to answer the question first. So very telltale to my mother-in-law's personality. She has strong opinions and she has no problem voicing them. So she was the first person to respond. So it was, what does retirement look like? My mother-in-law said very quickly and openly, in retirement, I want all the cows off of this place. I want no cows. I want to upgrade the camper, and I want to be able to travel in the camper and be able to spend any of our free time doing that, visiting friends, visiting family, seeing the country, etc. Okay, that's how it went. And then the question was directed then to my father-in-law, who is not quick to give his responses. And so again, it was, okay, what does retirement look like for you? And he says, well, in retirement, I'd like more cows. And this is when like a light bulb went on in my head. And I was like, oh, this is the reason I left happy hour for this. You bet I left happy hour for this. Because in my brain, I was like, okay, how are we going to compromise this? Like I thought, marriage and all these kinds of things were all about compromise. How are we going to compromise on no cows and more cows? And in my brain, I was like, this cannot be done. Hand me the popcorn. Where are we going to go from here? And what was such an interesting thing to watch unfold was that the more he asked questions, the more I realized that, okay, this isn't about the cows at all. This is about the values that they want. And so he wants, in this case, he wanted the cows because he wanted a sense of purpose. He wanted things that he could do on a daily basis. He's like, we're not going to be going on vacation every day. We're not always going to be pulling the camper around. I need to have something to do. And I don't know that he used the word, I need to have a purpose, but it was clear to us that he was looking for a purpose. He was looking for something to retire to. Because when we retire from one job, or when we step away from one job or one role or one responsibility, we're oftentimes moving on to a different role or responsibility. It's not that our life or responsibilities or that our purpose just ends. So in this case, it shouldn't. So he was looking to move into more responsibility on the ranch so that it gave him a purpose and it was a hobby for him too. So, and what my mother-in-law was really looking for was freedom and flexibility. And so this is where Joshua and I now really incorporate into our schools. Okay, sometimes there's a time and a place for compromising, but oftentimes if we can accommodate based on the value of what people are wanting, then we can find this harmonious kind of ebb and flow to give people at least some of what they want, rather than, sometimes compromise. It's like neither one of you get exactly what you want. In this cow situation, you couldn't compromise that. It's either all or nothing. Either he wins or she wins. But because it's not about the cows, it's about the values. How can we get, in this case, her the freedom and flexibility that she desires, while he can maintain the purpose and the daily lifestyle that he desires? And how can we combine those things? And so having a trained facilitator to help bring that out can be very, very beneficial.
Yeah, that's so good, because it's peeling back the layers to get to the true root of the problem or the root of the desire.
Yes.
Yeah. Words do not convey always the energy and the feeling. And we don't even know, like sharing our ideas, we can't always just do that easily to other people. So I love that, having a facilitator to just help understand the energy behind the words. Like, you want freedom. Got it. You need purpose and a hobby. Got it. Okay. So now when we know that, then we can come together, because if it is about cows, then there's either all or none. And
yes.
that's a problem. But when you're talking values, we can always come together.
Yes. And so there is, like, filling out the forms can be helpful, but I would say that's probably not the most effective first step. The first step would be, we think, come to Regenerate Retreat. Join us at a holistic management regen ag school. And then from there, it kind of opens up, it unlocks some of those doors, and then it gets the ball rolling. And what we find is oftentimes people will come to one of those events, just one person or just a few people, and then they're willing to come back with the rest of their team. Because when just one or two people come, it is impossible to go back to your team, to all your stakeholders, and to recreate that whole experience. It's not the same. You can show them your notes, you can give them your aha moment comments, but it's not the same as them being there. Yeah. So we find that a lot of people are choosing to come back to these kinds of events with the rest of their family, with the rest of their team, so that the rest of them get to experience that for themselves.
Well, I think if we were the top tier, then this would be an easier, like what you're suggesting would be something that would be totally doable. But it's the level above us that we're trying to get the buy-in from. So I totally hear what you're saying and agree completely. But I think that's where, like, when you're going up, because anyway, I could argue for my own limitation, but I'm not going to do that. I recognize where you're coming from.
And sister, I will say, when we were home, my dad gets Southern Livestock Standard. It's sitting over on the table, so I could see it. And on the cover of this one particular one was talking about succession planning. And he had looked at it and handed it off. It says the headline is "Who Will Take Over the Ranch?" And it was some tips from Noble Research Institute. And he's listened to enough of our Soil Sisters podcasts that he had looked at it and made sure that I saw it and was able to read it. So it's like, it's
Exactly.
happening.
Yes.
Yes.
It's
I do agree.
happening.
Yes.
It can feel slow as molasses, but it's happening.
Well, and
Yes.
like just because you don't see it doesn't mean that it's not happening. So anyway, yes, sister, it is. And I feel that. So.
And I hear both of you absolutely. So for this specific, because you are not alone here, as you know, in this case, it has to be his idea. It has to be the patriarch or the matriarch's idea. And so we ask the questions, what can we do or continue to do to help plant those seeds so that, God willing, they can reach the conclusion that you're hoping for them. But again, it has to be their idea.
Yeah.
Well, and I think having the focus being on what do you want your life to be like now? We've asked whenever we recorded a podcast with our dad, asking him, what do you want the future of the ranch to be? What do you want your legacy to be? And he wants things to continue on. He doesn't want the land to be sold, but as far as creatively having a vision, that's not his responsibility now. He's done his part. And so now it is our turn to come to the table with, this is how we envision the future. And I think really it comes down to the pressure being relieved, or that there's no judgment. This is just creative, collaborative conversation. And I think there's just some defensiveness that tends to happen when, whether or not we're talking a family and generations, or we're talking about the hierarchy in a business where, your marketing director has an idea for the chief marketing officer. The dynamics are the same, where he's like, are you trying to tell me how to do my job right now? So it's like, how do we flow through that with grace and making sure that we're not stepping on toes or, ruffling feathers along the way?
So there is the Bruschi family in Montana, and they have a beautiful succession plan. And their oldest patriarch and matriarch, they are on the senior advisory council for the rest of the ranch. And in that role as senior advisors, which is their official title within the ranch, they still get to give input, share their wisdom. They absolutely want their family to succeed. They want the land to succeed. And this is the ideal, but they've made this plan where they each got to describe what they wanted for their legacy. And then they had the conversations, to make this happen. How are we going to make this happen? And so in this instance, giving that title so that he was able to retire to senior advisory council, which meant that by retiring to that, the physical labor, he was not required and he was not expected to provide as much physical labor as he had been in the past. So he still holds a very important role, but the physical part of it has now been passed down to some of the other people who have been able to step up. And so Joshua and I often talk about, okay, what are you stepping into so that somebody else can step into? And it's going to look different, of course, because each of us do things, we lead a little bit differently. But if we think about this like stair step kind of thing, what are you going to step into? Maybe it's a senior advisory role. If people there in that role can feel like they have a purpose and they're contributing and their blood, sweat, and tears from their past matters, then these next people coming up can feel a lot safer and more empowered because you have senior advisors.
Yes.
But then you're physically able then to do that kind of labor. And sometimes we notice just with family dynamics, sometimes it skips a generation. It goes from grandparents to grandchild. So every succession plan is going to look a little bit different, but when people can see examples of other families who have done it, that they know that it can be done, and they know that their contribution is going to be valued, it can help grease the skids. Just, yes, it has to be their idea. They have to still feel valued, and they're stepping into something and allowing somebody else to step into that next step.
In this article that Noble Research Institute had added their 6 or 7 steps to succession planning, what their recommendation is, if there's birth, death, marriage, health events, either acquiring or selling of land, you immediately start working through your plan and revisiting what you've said and done. But if no changes have happened, every 3 years, we should still be looking and revisiting this plan. So I would like to circle back to the meeting where no cows or more cows, and how that ended up playing out, and then how y'all are continuing to work and revisit your plan.
Yes. So, once you can identify your values, what it is you really want, then you can start to look at options. And so again, when your back's not against the wall, when people aren't highly emotional, feeling really frustrated, really angry, really bitter, really, really resentful, when we can be in a really good mental space, when we can think creatively, we have the power to brainstorm, like, okay, how could we have more cows on this place, but not have more responsibility? And so they threw out different options, like share cattle was an option, have a renter come in. So I believe what they ended up doing initially was, in the context of my in-laws, was I think they did rent the land and have share cattle. So cows were here, but my in-laws didn't own them. My father-in-law was pleased as punch to be able to go do some of the chores and help care for them. But ultimately then when they wanted to go travel, then they had the freedom and flexibility to do it because they weren't tied down here. And then eventually, in our case, in 2015, we started the transition process to move back to the ranch. And so, yes, we have all been stepping into different roles and navigating that. So my father-in-law he works on the ranch, and he works extremely hard, and he loves it. He finds a lot of fulfillment in it, but a lot of the risk and responsibility is now on Joshua and me.
And how has that transition been of you and Josh taking the reins? Was it just seamless, or was there some prickly points of letting go?
In our context, there has not been resistance to it. And I think a big part of that, again, this is just our context, that my in-laws both had off-farm jobs. And so when we came in here, they have been very supportive, especially my father-in-law, because for years and years and years before we even moved to the ranch, Joshua would invite my father-in-law to soil health events, to the Grazing Lands Coalition events, so he could hear things from his own peers. And it wasn't, Joshua trying to convince him to do something or to believe something or to adopt a certain practice or to try different things. It was his own peers talking about it and talking about, not only the benefits of it, but also their struggles, because we can learn from other people's struggles. But really, my in-laws have been very open and receptive and appreciative coming back here. So we have not experienced the kind of conflict that I know some people do, but I will say that we have worked some families through some conflict with facilitation. I mean, we know we've worked with some families where it was two brothers who, like, the oldest generation was no longer alive, and so these two brothers had lots of conflict and did not see eye to eye. So it's just having a facilitator can at least take that pressure off of the family members.
Yes. Yeah, this is a true story.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know that. We've all had experiences in our own lives where we needed somebody else to kind of be the bridge.
I want people to be legacy leaders. So to the best of your ability, even if you are struggling wherever you are right now with the generation that's above you, think about how you want to use that, whatever you're feeling about it, frustration, resentment, whatever it is. I would encourage you, use that to help fuel. How do you want things to be different in the future? Because we can only control our own lives. And we can have a lot of influence on other people, but we can have a tremendous amount of influence on the people who come after us. So even if you are powerless or you feel powerless to change, we'll just say the generation above you or the people who have the voting rights or that kind of power, if you are feeling hopeless and helpless with that situation, think about what you can do. Surround yourself with people who can help you, and then you can have a positive influence on those who will come behind you and after you. Sometimes that's children, sometimes that's family members, sometimes it's not. So you can still, even if you can't control the above, you can control the things, the people who are coming and will eventually step into the roles that maybe you have now. So that being said, jumping over to Win Warriors, what we recognized in our own lives, because Joshua and I love conferences, we love workshops, we love books and resources and mentors and challenging our own thinking. So we want to be very clear. We do not have all of the answers. We do not have everything figured out, right? We are stewards of this land and we are life learners just like everybody else. And so what we have found after we go to these amazing conferences and workshops and events and retreats is we come home with expectations that we're going to implement all of these things. And even if we just pick a couple of things, we're going to implement these new things and it's going to take us to the next level. And so we come home with that expectation and then we drop all of our luggage and notes and backpacks and laptops like on the floor, and we get back home to our normal and usual where there's meals and catch-up chores and all those kinds of things. And then sometimes somebody gets a little cold or whatever happens, like the reality happens. We go back to our normal lives that were already full and busy, and then we're trying to implement these brand new things. And every day that goes by that you don't implement that new behavior or that new habit or that new tool, whatever that looks like, you almost feel worse because you saw potential and your reality is like, okay, just we're not winning here. We're not gaining. We're not doing the thing that we thought we were going to do. And it can feel really overwhelming. It can feel a little depressing. I won't put words in people's mouth, but for us, it felt really defeating. So we thought, okay, how can we better support people? Because if we're feeling this way, we imagine other people feel this way too. So I started Win Warriors. And it actually was, I heard this term for the first time at the Holistic Management Regen Egg School. That happened the year before I met you two. There was a couple there from Australia. And when we ran around the opening circle, she said, I study positive psychology. And I was like, maybe everyone else is familiar with that specific term, but I was like, I don't know what positive psychology is. So after that, I looked into it and it really is, okay, there is psychology. Like back in the 1940s after the war in the United States, so much of the funding went to research psychological ailments. So like post-traumatic stress and depression and anxiety. Okay, so that is a very needed piece of psychology, absolutely. What kind of got forgotten was, okay, how do we build resistance? How do we maintain mental health? Not just, the level of psychology where it's like, okay, people are struggling. How do we get them back up to ideal? How do we, in the positive psychology space, how do we keep the endorphins flowing, keep our mental health more resistant so that when we do come up with these things, when things happen in our lives, how do we become more resistant to, falling into the trap of having these negative thoughts swirling in our minds? So that's positive psychology. So the Win Warriors really focuses on harnessing the power of positive psychology from a winning perspective. And then it is taking the benefit of collective wins. So I'll phrase it like this. If you've ever played on a team, let's just say a sport, whatever sport you play on a team, when you win as a team, you celebrate as a team and you congratulate each other. And even though, like, we'll say it's basketball, if you're all making different baskets, we celebrate all of that because all of our contributions are building a win for our team. And even if we don't actually win the game, we still won. We still scored. We still made those points. So the Win Warriors focuses on, it's an accountability group that celebrates the wins. So we focus on the wins. We talk about how good it's going to feel when we accomplish those wins. And then we collectively celebrate the wins together as a team. And so what happens on a psychological, like, we get endorphins when we talk about those things and we win together. So we're compiling all of these wins and we are celebrating them, and it propels us to want to continue to keep winning. And by winning, it means we're crossing those things off of our checklist. We're taking care of those annoying tasks, and we are biting off those big chunks that are going to lead us toward our bigger goals.
So I saw an Instagram post today, and it was showing the Blue Angels. And it was before they do one of their, crazy, intense flights. They do a simulation. They're sitting around a conference table and they're going through everything they're going to be doing later in a plane with their eyes closed. And everybody's visualizing, and I do this and I do this, and they're doing the motions with their hands, or they're leaning, or they're looking, they're turning their heads, but they are visualizing and simulating themselves having a perfect performance. And so the idea that our brains don't know the difference between a simulation of us winning or us actually going out there and winning.
Yes.
Practicing this helps you to achieve that.
Yes.
Well, I just love it because I'm a consciousness coach, and I teach people that we are creating our reality by how we respond to what happens in our lives. And so the energy that we carry with us when we take action, when we do the things that we do, is literally the energy that we're going to get from the outcome. So just understanding that, and I love it. I love it. We focus positively, and we soothe ourselves and allow ourselves to feel frustrated or struggle or whatever it is, with our mind mentally continuing in the direction of what we want to go. And then we're just letting go of the things that don't serve us anymore and finding the energy to move us further in the direction of what we want. So this is just more philosophy, really. The HMI organization that just fits in so well with my own life and the way that I live and want to live and feel that is most healthy and happy and beneficial to everyone who's actually participating in life in this way. So it's just more confirmation that this is exactly what I'm interested in and looking for, and understand how the value of this work and this focus doesn't just support us and our family, but our community and our world.
Yes, I love that you said that. I agree so much. And within holistic management, it really, for people who are not familiar with the framework, it's how can we keep in harmony and uplift and steward these three different components. And the three components are that biological component that includes the soil, the animal, the human health, the health piece of it. How can we support the financial, the wealth building, the profitability piece of it? And then how can we support the relationship, that social piece of it? And so, yes, we need to be mindful of all three of those components, and anything, that we could think of fits into at least one of those three. So how do we maintain that to have a harmonious kind of life? I don't like to use the word balanced because it's not always going to be perfectly balanced, of course, but how can we support that? And Joshua and I have, yes, really honed in on that relationship piece, because if we aren't having the conversations that get us to where we need to go for our own mental health and well-being, for the health and benefit of the relationships of the people that we have in our family and on our teams and our colleagues, if we are not having the conversations that lead us to profitability and wealth generating and what we want to do with that wealth, then, what legacy are we really leaving? So as we work together and we ask really great questions and we invite other people to be a part of the conversation who can help us get ourselves to where we want to go, it's just such a gift, because we were designed to live in community.
100. So if there are people that are working in a bubble and they want to participate in the Win Warriors, I know you have a spring session coming up. So talk a little bit about how that works and how somebody might sign up to join you.
Yes. So if you go to seekfirstranch.com, you will see Win Warriors is an option. And if you click on that, the spring session is going April and May. I will help you get plugged in. So I know some of you are going to be listening to this podcast and we're going to be well outside of those months, but if you contact me, my contact information is on our website. I will absolutely answer your questions and get you plugged into that. Essentially, what we do with Win Warriors is we have a weekly Zoom for 1 hour. And so we celebrate our wins from the week. And then we are intentional about setting our next goals. And then we specify which ones we would like extra accountability on, because some of those things we know we like to drag our feet on. And so it's helpful to know that somebody else is waiting to celebrate that win with us. So it's a weekly kind of ongoing thing. Everybody participates during the week according to their own time and their own schedule. So you do it when it works for you. And then the Zooms are scheduled, they're recorded. So if you'd like to get plugged into that, I'm happy to help. And then our Regenerate retreats are available there. If you'd like to inquire about a Regenerate school or retreat, we travel anywhere. So we can come to you, we can talk about what that looks like. Or if you'd like to join one, you can always, there's also a little button that you could click that you'd like to join one. I have a link for upcoming events with things that are already scheduled. And then if you'd like to just book us, maybe have a conversation about what might facilitation look like for you, or if you'd like Joshua or myself or the both of us to speak at one of your events, you will also see a link to schedule a exploratory call with us as well.
Outstanding. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that's important to round out this conversation?
I think we have touched on so many things. And so I appreciate everybody listening and your time. I really want people to feel supported and to feel like they have community. And if you already have that, I am so excited for you. I would encourage you to invite other people into your circle. If you want to be a mentor to others, absolutely. If you are lacking a mentor or a supportive network, please reach out to me and I can help you get connected. If it's not us, maybe it's somebody else we know.
Yes, the Holistic Management International family is amazing. And really anyone that is seeking to move into regenerative agriculture as a practice, I feel like there is a level of consciousness and, awakeness within this group of people.
Yes.
That wherever you turn, the odds are high that you're going to meet somebody that is good and helpful and can guide you in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Yes, I agree.
I love it.
All right. Any parting words from you, sis?
Tara, you and Joshua were just a pleasure, an absolute pleasure and a joy to be with and to listen to and to have conversation with and to gain wisdom from. So I just appreciate you both and how far you've come from I'm never going back to the ranch. So just the fact that I tell everyone all the time, when you've been through something, recognize what you've been through and then hold that in you so that you know you can go through the next thing. And so I want people to know you said, absolutely not. I will never do this. And now today, this is your great joy, the life that you live. And that's wonderful. That's really wonderful. And I think it's powerful for people to hear that story. And I thank you for sharing that with us and sharing your time with us today. And I just appreciate you and Josh and the whole HMI organization. So thank y'all so much.
Yes, thank you both so much for being champions for not just soil health, but understanding that this is really about supporting life and relationships and the well-being of people. So you are both, Joanna and Crystal, you are champions in this space. And so I want to thank you so much for being a voice out there of encouragement and positivity, because we need more stuff like this.
Yay.
Amen.
Thank
you. Thank y'all for hanging out.
Connect with the Soil Sisters at txsoilsisters.co. Submit questions, guest or show ideas, and sponsorship inquiries. The Soil Sisters podcast was created and produced by Joanna Nuding. Editing and sound design are in the capable hands of the PodConnects Podcast Network.